Hey there, Nate Urandi, Orion Training Systems. Sorry it's been a while for those who follow me on a regular basis. Life's been crazy in a good way, but I'm back. So, mechanical doping. It's been in the news for a while. It's back in the news now. Lots of cases. Here are a few that just scratched the surface. Van den Driesch, the U23 cross rider who got banned for 6 years after her bike was scanned and it was found to have a motor inside of it. Ryder Hagedal, famous video of him crashing and his bike starting to spin around in a circle because the rear wheel kept spinning. That doesn't happen on a normal basis, believe me. I've crashed, you probably have too on your bike. Quintana, same thing. It happened to him on a TT stage, I believe, in, I think, the Giro or the Vuelta. It was the Vuelta. He crashes on a downhill. His back tire keeps spinning. Froome, obviously, his insane, completely unrealistic uphill attacks when all of a sudden he starts spinning at 120, 130 RPM cadence and just blows away the rest of the riders who are out of the saddle, jamming as hard as they can and have no way of keeping up. First of all, forget how inefficient that type of pedaling is. If you've ever tried it, you go nowhere, right? What else? Other Grand Tour riders over the past probably 5, 10, 15 years are having these mechanical doping accusations leveled at them. Even Cancellara, during his insane 2010 double at Flanders and Roubaix, the way he just shattered the fields in both those races is being scrutinized heavily. So again, just scratching the surface, but let's dig into one of these. Let's dig into Cancellara's 2010 Flanders and Roubaix campaign, where he absolutely just drubbed both of those fields. You know, normally when a rider throws down an attack, it's called a jump. And the reason it's called a jump is because that rider jumps out of his saddle, just like he's sprinting for the line at the end of a race. And he throws it down a gear or two and just attacks with everything he's got. The goal is to create separation immediately from himself and the riders he's trying to drop, as well as throw in some demoralization. If you're already tired and some rider attacks you and does so in a way that looks fairly effortless, that doesn't feel very good when your legs are already screaming for you to stop, but you got to dig deeper and find something to either go with that attack or make the decision like, I can't, I got to stay where I'm at. And that's how races typically or can be won. So that's why it's called a jump. Yet with Cancellara, at the key moments of both of those races, he stays seated and looks very fresh, very much at ease. He doesn't even look like he's exerting any more effort. And when you look at that compared to Tom Boonen in Flanders, when they're going up the Gerardsbergen, Boonen is all over his bike, fighting with it, trying to keep up, and Cancellara just rides away up that hill. And I've ridden that hill, and it is nasty. It's not necessarily super duper steep, but the cobbles are rough for a Flanders cobbled section, and you've got some twists and turns, and you have to be on. And if you start losing your momentum, it just slows you way down. And so when you look at those two riders, it's not like Cancellara has a much bigger, easier, meaning gear, or smaller, I should say, easier gear than Boonen. You know, they're going to be in a very similar gear. They're very similar in build and strength. They're both multi-time winners. And so they know what they're doing, and they know how to get to that critical point of the race and be in a position to still win. So to see the disparity of how those two riders hit that stretch of the course is very interesting. So now let's think about Roubaix. In the 2010 Roubaix, Cancellara and Boonen are in the same small group of riders. They're a little bit back from the earlier attackers and even subsequent attackers during the race. And, excuse me, Boonen drops back towards the back of the field. Cancellara goes to the front. And it's at that point where all of a sudden he moves like he's shot out of a cannon. And not only from that group, but he then blows through a string of riders that are further up the road. And it's over a cobbled section. And so you look at that and you're like, wow, what an attack. But then Boonen, again, multi-time Roubaix winner, plus a group of riders, some of his teammates and some others who are motivated to win that race, can't do anything. Like, one rider leaves a group of motivated riders in his wake and extends a lead to well over 2 minutes. Think about that. One rider against a group extends a lead to over 2 minutes. And not because this group of riders is just floundering around, not motivated. No, you chase. No, you chase him. Nothing like that. Like, that's the critical point of the race where the alarm bells are going off like, oh shit. Yet, over 2 minutes put into a motivated group of extremely strong riders and people who are every bit as talented in winning a classic as Cancellara. So it's also curious that after 2010, when more and more grumblings about mechanical doping started to arise, that while Cancellara did win additional classics, he never won them in that fashion again. So then when you take those two races and look back a few years and see how in other critical instances he won races in that same manner, you start to scratch your head. Now, is this me saying that he for sure mechanically doped? I think that's a silly term, but that's what they're calling it. No, I can't say that because right now there is no intrinsic proof. I'll be curious to see what happens when at the end of this month there is sort of that unveiling about mechanical doping and its history within the peloton, but we'll see. But what I will say is this: when you witness something that appears otherworldly, it almost assuredly is. And I don't mean that in a good way. When you see a trend of how a certain thing happens, a mountain attack, you get out of the saddle, you crank, you go. You don't stay seated and start spinning at 120, 130 RPMs. When you attack in a classic, you get out of your saddle and you go. You don't stay seated and just look like you got shot out of a cannon like a torpedo. I guess, a submarine like a torpedo. It just doesn't happen that way. So when you see things that I'll call otherworldly occur, you got to start scratching your head, right? I'll leave you with that so this doesn't get too long. Hopefully it sparked your own wheels turning in your head. As always, if you have comments, leave them in the comments section below, and happy training.